Hello everybody. I'm stoked to be back making another video. And I just wanted to say thank you for all the sweet comments and for Hannah, who talked about me in one of her videos. I was like, me? So yeah, thank you so much. It honestly felt like a celebrity was talking about me, like some rando girl on the internet. So yeah, that was really sweet. And I'm just so happy to be part of this community. Just, you know, channels I've come across so far, and just the beautiful people that have come into my screen these past couple days has been super awesome. So thank you. I'm happy to be here. So anyways, for today's video, I thought I would compile some of my favorite books to recommend to people when they come into the store. These obviously change from month to month depending on what I'm reading / what we get in new and noteworthy into the store, but I just thought it would be kind of fun to kind of talk about some of my favorites and go-tos. I guess I should mention, if you haven't watched my other videos where I talk a little bit more about myself, I work at an independent bookstore, and we try and focus on carrying local authors as well as just books from indie publishing houses and quite a few books having to do with Indigenous literature. So you're gonna see a little bit of that here. But yeah, that's kind of the backstory, and hence why I'm recommending books to people, because that's kind of my job. So yes, and also some of these are like mainstream and, you know, not part of like any indie movement or anything like that, but they're just great reads that I just try and push on people as much as possible. So yeah, I thought I would maybe do this like bi-monthly, and yeah, just because why not? I think it's fun, and obviously I love talking about books, so here we are. All right, so the first two, actually most of these are nonfiction. Actually, that's a lie. Two fictions and the rest are nonfiction, but the first one that is a go-to, because we have quite a big section in the bookstore, just anything related to social justice. My go-to is always Between the World and Me. When I read this the first time, I honestly read it twice because it just really impacted me. It was such a beautiful, beautiful, profound read, and I just want everyone to read this. So it basically is a very James Baldwin-esque in the sense that it is a letter that is written from a father's perspective to his son, and he's relaying his own biography and important lessons that he wants to share with his son. And we're privy into this beautiful relationship and dialogue between, or I guess it's not between, because we just hear the author's story. But the whole time I was reading this, I just felt so appreciative and humbled to even be privy to these words. So it was a absolutely stunning read. It's, like I said, incredibly profound, really lyrical. I'm sure most of you have read this. This is a very well-known book, as it should be. But if any of you have it in your TBR list, or you've been thinking about purchasing it, this is your reminder that this book is absolutely phenomenal, and you will want to reread it. You'll want to just soak everything in because it's a beauty of a read. So highly recommend it. The next one, again, is a nonfiction book, and it is called Thick and Other Essays by Tressie McMillan Cotton. And she actually has a podcast with Roxane Gay. It's a beautiful podcast. I will have the name of it down below if any of you are podcasting folk. That might be one to add to your list. But this is a phenomenal book of short critical essays. I'm biased because this woman is a sociologist, and that's what I studied for my undergrad. Sociology and gender, race, and social justice was my minor. So this book explores through an intersectional lens things to do with obviously being a Black woman in the state, as well as beauty within this capitalist system, beauty ideals, the whitewashing of beauty. There's a really interesting essay having to do with your social class, as well as just the income inequality within the states and the gendered and racial dimensions of that. I thought this was just my only critique is, truthfully, I wish it was longer. It's quite a short book. I think there's only like 7 essays in here, maybe even less. But I loved it. It was a great read, and I always recommend this to people because it's kind of short. So if you aren't very familiar with some of the concepts that Trusty talks about, or if you're just getting your feet wet, this is a great piece of critical writing that is very accessible. The way that she writes about certain things is quite digestible. You don't have to have like a degree or understand, these very oftentimes maybe a little complex themes and issues that she talks about. They're very accessible, like I said. So another one that I just always gravitate towards, and I make sure that I always have all of these in stock at all times because they're great. So yeah. Now switching gears, the next 2 I'm going to talk about, they're both from Canadian authors as well as published through independent publishers in Canada, because that's where I live. And they're absolutely stunning. So the first one is Joshua Whitehead's Johnny Appleseed. This is a work of fiction by a Cree Indigenous man. I think he's from Alberta, if I'm not mistaken. This book was an absolute joy to read. So we follow a young man, and he has just recently moved from the reservation that he grew up in, and he's pulled back into the reservation because his mom's husband has just died. And that kind of leads him, and therefore us, into a really beautiful journey of like introspection, reflection on Johnny, that's our main character, his life, his beautiful connection to where he's from, his Indigenous identity, as well as dealing with his sexuality as a queer Indigenous man. So beautiful conversations and very vulnerable conversations around that, as well as the beautiful connection that Johnny has to his grandmother. I loved reading about that relationship. It was just absolutely stunning. And this book is just so tender. I loved Johnny, our main character, like I said. I just wish I could hold him and give him a huge hug. And yeah, I just loved this book. And I'm really happy because in Canada, there's something that the CBC has every year called Canada Reads, and a selection of Canadian authors and their novels are picked, and they kind of have like a battle of like the best book. And at the end, there's a winner. And I was so pleased and proud that Joshua Whitehead's novel was actually one of the picks for this year. And it's actually, we've now narrowed it down to the top 2 finalists, and this happens to be one of them. So that just makes me super happy, because it just means that this book is going to get more exposure and more love. And it really should, because it's a beautiful, beautiful work of fiction. So highly recommend. And the second book, or no, the 4th book. God, I've already been talking for like 10 minutes. The next book is another stunning, stunning work of science fiction, actually. This one is called Love After the End, and it is actually an anthology, and it follows two-spirit, gender non-binary, Indigenous folk. Incredible. Also, the cover is absolutely stunning. I actually saw this artist in the UBC, the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, had an exhibit in their Museum of Anthropology of this artist, and it was amazing. But anyways, that's not what we're here for. That's not what we're here for. Yeah, so this book features stories from Canadian as well as American Indigenous folks, and it is just phenomenal. I actually discovered it because Joshua Whitehead was the editor for this guy, and I saw him talk. There's a bookstore in Montreal that I really love, and they have done such a beautiful job of holding virtual events throughout this whole pandemic, and it's just made me really happy to see the manager of that bookstore interview these amazing authors. And one of the talks that I was able to hop on was one with Joshua Whitehead speaking about this book. And the way that he describes all the stories in this book, they're all like post-apocalyptic, apocalyptic stories featuring Indigenous, indigiqueer, two-spirited Indigenous folks. And all of the stories end on like a hopeful note. And his whole intention for this project was to highlight Indigenous joy, Indigenous resilience, Indigenous happiness, moments of, just joy, because his whole idea was to propel or put forward a different narrative that oftentimes gets lost, or one that we don't see as much. We often see the plight of BIPOC folks, as well as stories of sorrow and sadness, like, not that those stories aren't important, they're equally as important, but I think it is so beautiful to see the flip side of that, and to see stories of resilience, hope, and joy, and all of these stories do that. So it was just absolutely beautiful. It's obviously hard to rate an anthology because every story is different, but every story is so entirely unique and interesting and captivating in its own way. And just reading about these characters, there were a few in here that I kind of hope that it turns into their own independent novel, because they're just that great, and something really different for a lot of people that this might not be something that they would have naturally gravitated towards, but it's definitely worth a read. It's absolutely beautiful, and highly recommend. So yeah. Okay, we are back. My camera died. So halfway through what I was saying, just the screen went blank. So we are back. And the next book I wanted to talk about was Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. This was a beautiful read. And you might know this one already, because truth be told, when people come in, this is one that I just instantly recommend. And most people are like, we've read it, it's amazing. Like, what else have you got? But if you haven't heard of this book, it follows the, it's nonfiction, and it's a book of just short stories where the author shares with us her, or I guess it weaves together her life experiences, her own biography, with her Indigenous knowledge, as well as just scientific, her scientific background, because she is a professor of environmental biology. And this book just made me, I know it sounds really cheesy, and I don't mean this to sound like a cheesy book by any means, but it just made me feel so hopeful and appreciative of the world, the natural world around me, and how interconnected we all are, and how absolutely pivotal it is that we acknowledge that and understand that we live in tandem, or in the same playing field as every other living creature on this earth, and to value that and our relationship to nature. It made me just like hug a tree, talk to my plants, and it was just an absolute joy to read. It was like a warm hug, and it was such a hopeful read as well. Yeah, it was just such a beautiful, uplifting story of reckoning and understanding how valuable the world around us is, and how important it is to not destroy it like we've been doing. And yes, I just highly recommend this book. It is absolutely beautiful, and she's such a poet. She truly is. I mean, every short story in here is incredibly poetic and just a stunning, stunning work, and I highly recommend it. And it's also, fun fact about this book, it was actually published in 2013, and if it wasn't relevant then, it's surely incredibly relevant with the current climate. And it's really incredible to see that this book has had a huge like resurgence this year, or even it started last year. But yeah, I just think it's so beautiful that this book is getting the recognition that it deserves, even if it's all these years later. But yeah, it just also makes me really happy that everyone is reading this. So yeah. Okay, and the last book that I like to recommend for those that want a work of fiction, they want a really interesting plot, a really captivating book, I always go for this one, and this one's actually by a local author, and it is a fiction novel called Greenwood. I also just love the cover. I think it's stunning, and you see the rings of the tree. If you can't tell, it does involve trees and nature. And it is a intergenerational family saga. So we are introduced to a family and we follow them throughout the years, but in a non-linear way. So if you are a fan of linear stories, this might not be the one for you, because we start off, and I'll show you because I thought that this illustration was really beautiful. We start the book off in 2038, and we then go to 2008, 1974, 1934, 1908, and then all the way back, and the book ends where we started in 2038. So it was a joy to read. I got very enthralled to the story and the characters. The way that the author writes about the Pacific Northwest is truly stunning. And even while I was reading this, I was like, man, he really just captivates the essence of what nature is like in this neck of the woods. I live in the Pacific Northwest. And I was like, he must live around here. Like, there is no way this man just like, you know, paints such a beautiful atmospheric vibe without knowing it firsthand. And sure enough, he lives on Bowen Island. So, yeah, it's, like I said, it's a family saga, but it weaves together the importance of trees, and you'll just have to read it. It's stunning. I highly recommend this. It is like kind of a thicker-ish book, but honestly, I finished it in a couple days. It was just that good. So, and it's always cool to read. I know some people don't like it, because I have said this to some customers and they're like, ooh, I actually don't like that. But I find it really interesting to read about a place that you have either lived in or live currently, just through reading it and experiencing through different eyes. I always kind of find interesting, so I really enjoyed that. So yes, that is everything. Those are all the books that I am currently recommending to whoever walks into the door, through the door. They're beautiful reads, incredibly informative. They make you be critical of the world around us. And they will stick with you for sure. So yeah, those are all the reads I have, or the picks I have for you today / this month. Like I said, it'd be fun to do this every so often. And please recommend me any books that you think I might like, that might be cool to carry in a bookstore. I'm always open to suggestions, and yeah, I look forward to coming back with more videos and meeting new people on here. I know I sound really corny, but I'm just so happy. This is awesome. So yeah, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you soon. Bye.